See, I think this is the biggest concern shared by a majority of Koreans who are honest, the students, the teachers, as well as the parents. Are these Korean students going to be put at a disadvantage because of these isolated attempts of cheating?
Yes, they are, definitely, in my opinion. And you can see this back in 2007 in January. There was another sort of scandal where it wasn't as explicit as this one, but basically what happened was the 2007 January test was exactly the same as a test given previously by ETS. I think it was December of 2005 or something like that. And somehow a few people found out that this was going to be the test. And so what they did is they gave the test out to some of the students. So those students obviously had very high scores. And then what happened was these students realized, wow, it is the same test. Then they contacted students in America who were taking the test, 16 hours later and said, hey, it's the same as December 2005. Take a look at that test. And those kids did really well. Now, the travesty here is a lot of, I would say 9% of the students who took the test, I believe there were 900 test takers during that time, did it honestly.
Yeah.
And because of those few people,
their scores were nullified.
Now, if you think about it, the people who benefited the most out of this were the students in the States, right? Because they realized it was a December 2005 test and they had actually plenty of time to prepare for it, but ETS did not nullify those tests as well. So that's also a problem. And then if you understand the college admissions process, many of the schools, the last time you can take an SAT that they'll accept for admissions is January. So they lose that chance. A lot of the students lost that chance to send their final test score. So it is, I think, bad. And then, of course, you have to think about image. With all of this in the news, whether it's only 1% of the population or even less than that, like this parent we just heard from, like they said, it really puts a bad image on Korea and Korean students. And then when college admissions officers look at a student's score, they have to do it with a hint of doubt. Is this student really this good, especially if there is a big increase in the SAT score?
Yes, especially if it's the case we talked about yesterday with Dr. Kim, Ivy League dropouts.
Right, exactly.
Oh, sure. 44% of Korean students drop out of schools, the top 14 schools. 44%.
And this is that big question, for what, and I don't know how exactly the undergrad admission system works, but usually, I was part of the graduate school admission committee because in the graduate school I was in, we used to include one student as one of the 4 members of admissions committee, and I was serving in that committee for about a year. And when we were there, we were using this test scores as a kind of like a cut line. And so the differences in scores above certain level
would not really
did not make any difference at all. And we were only paying attention to the recommendations and the essays and other records. And so I don't know to what extent actually this like a 1 or 2 score difference in
the undergraduate process is exactly the same. The schools have a certain formula, academic index, so to speak, where they look at the SAT scores, and to tell you the truth, the grades are the most important. Then the SAT scores, as well as other things like AP scores and subject tests. And they come up with an academic index. And if the student meets that minimum requirement, then they look at everything else. So of the students that are left that meets their academic requirement, they look at activities, they look at leadership, they look at the essays, recommendations, all of these things. So it's a very holistic approach. And I think what the problem is, a lot of Korean parents still are very stuck in the way they grew up, in which the Korean entrance exam is 100% everything.
That's right.
Right? And they count so much on that SAT score. But when you go to a U.S., if you ask an admissions counselor, if someone got 2,280 and another kid got 2,320, there's no difference. It's like 1 or 2 questions. So I think that's something that a lot of Korean parents need to realize.
And after that, there is that another for what question, because we just touched upon it a little bit briefly now. But even if let's say these students are admitted, right, after after the admission, when they join the campus and so on. When I was a graduate school, I had to deal with these students who were, this was school, MIT, and what happened was these kids, they were all the top students in their own localities. And they just couldn't accept the fact that some of the students had to be at the bottom of the scale, and these students were committing suicides. And I was a resident tutor, and on those years when I was doing the resident tutor, average number we had was about four suicide cases every semester.
I went to a school with the highest suicide rate.
Cornell,
Is that
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Right. So the happiness and how students deal with the life after that admission is also a big question, and it matters so much. So even if you send the students with high test score, other things have to work out together with.
Sure.
Right, accordingly. And the scores just they don't make that much difference. And that's something Korean parents do not understand, because where they're coming from is the tradition where, as Sid said, score makes the 100% difference.
So are we in unison here that Korean parents are mainly to blame?
Well, I would say it's rooted more in society here, because Korea does have a long history of using test-based performance to get jobs in the government for anything. And at that time, a lot of people thought that was a good thing, because despite your class, if you worked hard, if you studied hard and did really well on a test, and you were able to achieve success. So in that aspect, I think it's a good thing. But I just wish that testing wasn't the only thing, because it's not. And a lot of Korean parents think that because my cousin's neighbor's daughter got 2,300 and she was rejected from all the Ivy, my kid has to get 2,350. I can tell you 100% that person did not get rejected because their SAT score was low.
Well, we don't have too much time left, so I want us to kind of wrap things up by addressing this question. Korean education has been at the center of criticism for a long time now. Where do we go from here? So if we are going to try to divert the society away from the test-taking craze that we're in, what should we do?
Well, I think we are making some small changes, but I really think we need to take a holistic approach in admissions, and I think we have to look at the student as a person, not just a statistic or a test score. And I think we have to go towards the admissions officer approach, where we look at the test score, we look at their grades, we look at the classes, the difficulty of the coursework they took.
But a system has to be in place for that here in Korea.
It does.
We don't have that, right?
We don't have that yet, and it's going to take a long time to build that. But I think that's the way to get away from just test. Because we really ignore the process and what we learned during our education, the 12 years we're going to school. We only care about the score, not necessarily what we learned in those 12 years, and that's, I think, is wrong.
Right. And I always try to, make myself as the last standing optimist in any kind of issues here. But the way I see it is education problems in Korea, I hope and I believe that time will solve the problem. Korean parents right now, they're just used to, I think there are three steps of human development. One is there's a basic desire to survive. Once you can survive, you want to succeed. And after you succeed, you think about values and meaning and relevance of your life. And many Korean parents are up to the second level. We survived through the 50s, 60s, and we succeeded during the 70s, 80s, and now it's time to think about the values and relevance of our being here and what it all means to be human being. And that's
Sounds
the
like
next
Bloom's
question.
taxonomy there.
But I really believe that's the case, and younger parents will think more about this question, and their children, I hope and I believe, will be different.
And I see that change too, because I deal with parents every day, and I think now slowly they're realizing, look, what's good for my child,
Right.
Not just that they get into a name brand school and do miserable there and fail out and come back to Korea, but where will they go to fit in? Where will they go to succeed? Where will they go to develop themselves as a person?
Right.
And that's what I think we need to focus on.
Because parents have to change in order for the government to actually change.
Exactly.
That's
And
right.
the teachers and the hagwon to change as well.
Right.
All right, let's wrap it up here. Thanks, gentlemen, two doctors, very much for sharing your experience.